Our last story here involves Julian Assange. We have dozens of press freedom, human rights, and privacy rights groups calling for his release. What is going on with this story?
Yeah, so as we conclude, we are providing updates regularly through this program on Julian Assange's case. We've got reporting at shadowproof.com on Julian Assange, and last week we talked about the indictment that was somewhat expanded, though there weren't new charges added. It was window dressing to put some more material in there that could aid in the character assassination of Julian Assange and basically help the government argue that he's more of a hacker than a journalist. And so while that's unfolding and while the U.S. government presses on with this case, this case that threatens press freedom, we have the fact that he remains inside Belmarsh prison, this maximum security prison in London that has had struggles with the coronavirus, like all facilities throughout the world. And he applied for bail and was denied bail earlier on during the pandemic. Meanwhile, there's been evidence put on the record that would support allowing him to be released into home confinement. And we've got these groups that have now signed on to this letter, coming from the Courage Foundation, Reporters Without Borders, the International Federation of Journalists, PEN International, the National Lawyers Guild, and several other organizations, Cage UK, you've got European Center for Press and Media Freedom, and the Index on Censorship, Article 19, Big Brother Watch. These are organizations that are European primarily, and they're speaking out for his release. And they say in their writing that this is an unprecedented escalation of an already disturbing assault on journalism in the U.S. They're referring to this expanded indictment, and they mentioned that President Donald Trump has referred to the news media as the quote-unquote enemy of the people, whereas previous presidents have prosecuted whistleblowers and other journalistic sources under the Espionage Act for leaking classified information. The Trump administration has taken the further step of going after the publisher. Mr. Assange himself has been persecuted for publishing for nearly a decade. He's had real fears. They go on to outline some of the fears, to talk about his arbitrary detention, which he endured while being in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. There's a recap of what happened with the Obama administration that I won't go over again. They criticize Ecuador for the illegal termination of Assange's diplomatic asylum in violation of the Geneva Refugee Convention, and for inviting the British police to come in and arrest Assange. They criticize the fact that he served 50 weeks, a staggering 50 weeks, they write, for a bail violation. He was accused of jumping bail simply because he sought asylum in the embassy. And as they conclude, the confined persecution of Mr. Assange is contributing to a deterioration of press freedom in the UK and is serving to tarnish the UK's international image. Reporters Without Borders cited the disproportionate sentencing of Assange to 50 weeks in prison for breaking bail, and the Home Office's decision to greenlight the U.S. extradition request, as well as Mr. Assange's continued detention, as factors in the country's decline in its ranking to 35 out of 180 countries. So there's a World Press Freedom Index, and this year UK fell because of the way that they have abused and mistreated Assange in this case. So we've got this letter, another letter that we can add to various other letters from doctors and then other people who have been outspoken, demanding that at minimum, if you're not going to drop the charges, at least release Julian Assange to home confinement so that he doesn't die in prison from the coronavirus while waiting for this to unfold. And we do have a hearing scheduled for September that would continue the extradition process. But who knows if it will actually go on or not. We live in a very tenuous moment. Everything is volatile and changing. If there's a surge or spikes in cases, who knows if the court will be able to continue with a hearing that is really involved. There's going to be dozens of witnesses that are called by the defense to testify, a lot of evidence presented, and people in the court have to be able to do this safely in order to manage the hearing. They know that, and they won't want to proceed if it isn't safe for them to do so. But if they don't proceed with this hearing, then that just adds another 6, maybe 8 months to Julian Assange's time in prison before he's exonerated, or before, worse, he is sent to the United States. But all this time that just keeps going by, he just marked his 49th birthday this past week, and he has 2 children, and he's engaged, and all this time that just keeps passing by, there could be something humanely done to allow him to not have to be in prison while this is all unfolding.